So I'm going to keep my phone here because last time I did it didn't come up. We are live.
Hello. What's up, people?
I think it's like 10 seconds afterwards I see ourselves on my phone.
What's this on LinkedIn, yeah?
Yeah, it should be on LinkedIn, on the link we used earlier on. But the best way to do this is if people tell us they can see us. And normally people do. There they go. Look, it's all live. It's all going. Just make sure I turn this down though, because you do not want to hear double whack.
No.
Hey everybody, hope you're well. If you are with us and joining us, please comment on the page. I think it comes up as a page on the event. Very lucky to have my friend Dan join us today, one of the guys from Employees Health, and we're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about probably a fair few things about what's going on and in the workplace and how sleep and nutrition can affect both us as humans and the workplace and the work we do, but hopefully in a nice relaxed manner. But before I do that, a couple of things I want to just to hammer home this point of why sleep is so important and why we're going to talk about it. The statistics I have, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but 46% of individuals with frequent sleep disturbances report missing work or events and making errors at work, compared to 15% of people. The average sleep in the UK is 6.66 hours. And there are a couple more, just because I want to nail this one home. As many as 16 million UK adults are suffering from sleepless nights, as a third say they have insomnia. 2/3 of the UK adults suffer from disrupted sleep, and nearly a quarter, 23%, manage no more than 5 hours a night. So,
wow.
When we obviously get into this discussion a bit more, you'll see why them stats are a bit bonkers. But before we kind of begin just to look at sleep and look at why it's so important, Dan, welcome. This is the first one you've joined us on. Dan is one of the Employees Health team and a wicked character and very, very great at doing what he does. So, Dan, introduce yourself. Give us a bit more of a background of your story, how you got into doing what you do. So, yeah, go on.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me on this little Wellbeing chat. I'm enjoying the concept behind it. I know that there's some people out there now who are probably listening. I can't see you. I can't see what your names are, who you are. Just want to say hello to everybody out there. Sleep's a really important topic, right? It's very pertinent, very relatable for many of us, especially throughout COVID, where there's been more use of technology than ever before, a lot more working from home, a lot more juggling various different responsibilities and having to make some sort of work-life balance out of it. As a result, what we know from the research is that everybody's having some sort of disrupted sleep at some period of their lives, and more so now than ever, people are having regularly disrupted or challenged sleep, whether that is clinical insomnia on one end of the spectrum, or a few sleepless nights, or really just not getting the quality sleep that you were getting prior to lockdown. There is numerous factors relating to this. I'm sure me and Rich will dive into over the next half an hour, 45 minutes or something like that. But give you guys a little bit of an idea of who I am and what I do. My name is Daniel White. I am technically a registered nutritionist and a functional medicine certified health coach. So I did, many years study psychology, nutritional masters, and then functional medicine, and then coaching, looking at, the links between different areas of health, kind of this holistic approach to well-being. Looking at nutrition, stress management, sleep, relationships, toxicity, movement, all of these different awesome pieces of the lifestyle medicine puzzle. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years. Although about 3 years ago, I experienced a bit of burnout myself. And so I dove really deeply into the topics of sleep, learning a lot from my mentors and my teachers, reading every book I could on the subject. And I made absolutely huge changes to my entire life as a result of simple adaptations to my lifestyle that meant that I started sleeping better. And a lot of this was information that I didn't hear people talking about in the holistic medicine space or in the functional medicine space or, in these kind of circles. So I felt really passionate about bringing some really simple but impactful education out to communities and companies and organizations, now schools and children and the youth. And so I founded a company called Sleep Better, Live Better. And working in collaboration with Rich, we deliver many of my different trainings and stuff like that to organizations all over the UK and all over Europe and stuff like that. Looking at, the principles of sleep and what we call circadian health. So kind of the health of our 24-hour body clock and the systems of our body, and how we can improve those things quite simply and easily and have a huge knock-on impact to all areas of our health. Over the last year, I've never seen such an interest from organizations in the science of sleep and sleeping well, because I think that so many people are challenged by changes in routines and things that have happened across the planet in the last couple of years that many more organizations than ever before are putting well-being at the forefront of their agenda, and especially looking at sleep, recovery and relaxation. Because as I'm sure that Richard and I will discuss, and maybe we know from our own personal experiences, at least I do, that when you're not sleeping well, you can't really be effective in any area of life. So that's kind of what brings me here. Excited to be here, excited to talk a little bit more about sleep today with National Sleep Awareness Week coming up next month. So lots going on for that too.
Next week?
Next week. Next month.
I know this year's flying away, man, but
it felt like a month, and that must have been 3 weeks ago, so it must have been next.
Yes, as you see, this is why Dan's on this podcast or podcast live, whatever you want to call this, because his depth of knowledge in this area is fantastic, and as he knows, and everybody else knows who has conversations with me, knows how grateful we are to have this education to support companies. And I completely agree with you in regards to the workplace seeing this need. I don't know exactly why it is why sleep has become so important, but maybe that shift of focus between working at home and working in the office, where people are seeing the benefits of getting an extra hour of sleep in the mornings, or not being rushed off their feet and having a better routine at night, all that kind of stuff. And they've seen there's a benefit to them there, and they're happier and a little bit less stressed and a little bit more focused with more energy, all that kind of stuff. And maybe then they're going, actually, this is because I'm getting a bit more sleep. So there's been a bit more awareness, and companies have recognized that link between better sleep, better and more sleep. And I think we'll talk about kind of that in a second, but to performance and our overall mental well-being. So before I would get into the kind of questions, I might as well introduce myself for the guys that don't know or haven't had a chance to chat to me yet. Obviously, I'm Rich. I'm the director of Employees Health. Employees Health is a workplace wellbeing company which brings professionals like Dan into the opportunity for companies to use and educate their employees. We have a vast array of people and services to support any company with any individual, hopefully giving them the information and the knowledge they need to improve their lifestyles. And I help companies do that, and I work with the HR and the business owners get around those issues. Anyway, less of the boring sales pitch. Quantity versus quality, Dan White. I know this is a subject you like to talk about in a bit more depth, and is that better versus more? So do you want to open that up?
Yeah, sure. I just want to segue back a second or two though to where we were talking about the change in sleep over the last couple of years. I think quality and quantity is very relevant there when we talk about many people who have been working from home or have undergone major lifestyle related changes as a result of COVID. It tends to have gone in two directions, right? Because things can only really go in two directions. Things get quote unquote better, or things get quote unquote worse. So for a lot of people, being able to work from home has provided them with more time to relax, more time to switch off, more time to be closer to family, closer to home. It could have had all sorts of benefits. And for other people, it has really squashed maybe previously respectable boundaries over what is home, what is work, what is this balance that I'm trying to create. Some people have undergone massive, financial stress, family stress, emotional stress. It's been a traumatic kind of 24 months now we're almost coming up to, aren't we? Mm. And the thing to consider is that, throughout this time, everybody's sleep has been impacted in some way, whether it's gotten better or whether it's gotten worse. Previously, we had a big focus on sleep quantity, right? We used to say, 8 hours of sleep is really important. 8 hours of sleep is really important. But now that boundaries have been, trodden on a lot of the time, it disrupts our ability to necessarily always get the perfect amount of sleep, right? So 8 hours of sleep. Obviously, the same is also inversely true that some people may now have more time to be at home, more time to sleep, and not have to get up as early in the morning. It may have benefited massively that way. But either way, whether you've lost or gained quantity, quality is another important factor to consider. So some of the biggest challenges I think for sleep in the last 2 years have been reductions in quality. I know a lot of people who aren't sleeping necessarily any less than they used to, but the quality of their sleep has changed massively because of an abundance of things like technology exposure. Now, tech exposure is one huge thing that I'm educating people on all the time. I'm having to constantly re-educate myself on it. Because I'm a millennial living in the 21st century who's got a mobile phone, a laptop, a games console, and everything else, that can keep us almost anchored in to the matrix 24/7, if you like. But one thing, that I'm acutely aware of is the fact that there are a lot of simple changes that people can make to improve the quality of their sleep without necessarily needing to sleep more or less. And also that, as I said, inversely, some of these factors have contributed to people's health kind of deteriorating over the last 2 years without massive changes necessarily to exactly the amount of time that they're sleeping. So quality and quantity when it comes to sleep, two parts of the same conversation, but slightly different. I prefer to focus on educating people how they can improve the quality of their rest without needing to stress themselves out or concern themselves and worry about needing to sleep more or what happens if they sleep less.
Yeah, and I kind of completely agree with you. The quality is where our cycles happen, where we get the good levels of REM, good levels of deep, good levels of light, and we need all three. And you see it often where people say they sleep for the 8 hours, but actually they're stressed, they haven't got the good habits or routines in place, and actually they're still waking up restless, right? So it is having that conversation, looking at how can we now improve the quality and the routine around getting there. So one of the things I'm going to put to you, Dan, and ask you is now companies are looking at the hybrid model more and more, and that involves some people getting up earlier some days, so our routine can be changed throughout the week. So maybe 3 days a week they're getting 8 hours, 10 hours sleep, whatever you want to say they're going to get, but then 2 days a week they're only getting 5 or 6. How do you look at that as a sleep aspect and creating a routine around that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So again, it's for me, it's about not focusing the conversation too much on quantity and starting to discuss, what routines and habits are different between those days. Is it because 1 or 2 days a week you're having to work very late into the evening? Is that disrupting your sleep? How can we displace, the impact that technology is having on your sleep? We talk a lot during our trainings and such like that about the impacts of light exposure, so artificial light exposure, and the impact of using, for example, blue light blocking glasses or technology applications on your mobile phone or your laptop or your computer that can begin to filter and change light systems so that if, for example, you do have to work a little bit later in the evening, the type of light and the technology that you're using may not be as detrimental to your sleep. So there are always going to be challenges of modern life. Looking for that perfect sleep schedule is, it's only possible for a very small percentage of us who aren't working late, who don't have children, who don't have conflicting priorities or hobbies, behaviors, habits, socializing, things that are going to at some point come and challenge our sleep. But my question is always, on a weekly basis, what habits can we implement consistency toward that are always going to improve our sleep quality, and that we may especially want to dial in on the days when there are challenges in our schedules or our own environment that are going to necessarily impact our sleep quality that we can think ahead towards.
Yeah, wicked. Great answer. And then, so I'm going to go dive a bit deeper into that, and that was my next note anyway. Blue light exposure. This is like your bread and butter. I know you love this stuff, and partly, obviously, as you know, I have some of your product, which I wear. When my habits and good, when my lifestyle is good, I wear them every night, and I find a huge benefit. But I know you know this like the back of your hand. So do you want to give us a bit more detail about what the effects of blue light is, what the effects of light exposure is, and a bit more detail about why that's important to our quality?
Yeah, sure. So this conversation, like you said, it is kind of my bread and butter. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss pretty much ever. And it relates to a lot more than our sleep as well. So what we're saying here is the quality of our relationship with light as human beings. One aspect of this relationship, as you mentioned, is blue light exposure. Blue light, pretty much in the modern world, is ubiquitous in most electronic devices, in most televisions, TVs, laptops, iPads, tablets, all these sorts of things. Even the cool white LED lighting in our homes, our fridges, our bedrooms, our bathrooms, all of this super energy efficient light. These blue LEDs, cool white LEDs contain a lot of blue light. And in this part and context of the conversation, that blue light is particularly harmful to the human eye, and especially to our sleep quality, because essentially throughout our time evolving on the planet or coexisting with nature, which is the major driving force behind why we sleep the way that we do, how our body functions internally, how our body clock works. All of these things have been dictated by our natural environment for most of the time that we've been evolving. And now we've introduced, really destructive variables in the form of artificial lights into our environment.
Only even within like the last 100 years or so.
Yeah, I think it's about 130 years ago now, 120, 130 years ago that they began to develop electricity plants. And so for the first time ever, they could, harness and conduct electricity in artificially light environments, such as, factories and such like that in the Industrial Revolution. For, perhaps the first time ever in human history. And prior to that, the only access we had to light after sunset was things like, whale lamps, oil lamps, candles, firelight, such like that. And the most massive shift in the form of electricity and artificial light has come in the last 100 years, and light has only gotten brighter and brighter. The Nobel Prize for the LED technology, I think, was only given out in the last 20 years or something like that. But people don't understand, unfortunately, that when it comes to sleep and when it comes to recovery and when it comes to winding off and switching off and de-stressing and putting your nervous system or your body into a state of relaxation, that any type of artificial light, after a certain time of day in particular, when it gets into the later part of the evening, and especially after sunset, is working directly against, your genetic and biological programming, because it's basically acting as an on switch when really darkness, which is in the natural environment, should be acting as the off switch. And so, blue light is a very important topic of conversation when it comes to sleep. It's not the devil, and there's lots of blue light in sunlight, and ideally every single day we should get out and spend ample amount of time, especially in the morning, outside under the natural light of the sun. Even if it's overcast, even if it's cloudy outside, you're going to get that wake up signal that your brain really needs. But at the opposite end of the day, we need to be respectful of our relationship with darkness. And unfortunately, that is one thing that we've really begun to disrespect, especially in the last 2 years, where we've been exposed to so much technology and an increase in light exposure. And many of us are very unaware of the impacts that this has on, on our biology and on our health. So it's a really exciting area, a really fascinating area of conversation, because a lot of the changes that people can make, you alluded to one of them before, like wearing these glasses at nighttime, these blue light blocking glasses, can be, the impacts of them can be pretty instantaneous and pretty massive. And they don't require that huge a change to somebody's lifestyle as some other things.
You look a bit silly. You just look a bit silly between 8 and 10 o'clock at night. I get told all the time, they're like, why are you wearing those stupid glasses? I'm like, well, I'm going to sleep better. You're not. Then that's another thing, right? And it's not just the fact that we use blue light as a thing blocking our melatonin production, which is the hormone which helps us sleep and gives us those signals, but we do tons of other things as well, right? Like the majority of people drink caffeine up until the early evening. We eat caffeinated foods. We do other bits and pieces which also destroy that melatonin production. And as you said, it can be really simple. And I think once you begin to understand just a couple of simple habits can change how that quality of sleep. And it's not hard, right? And I always say this, right? And I always have to kind of think about how saying this. It's not hard to make these changes, but for some people it might be. But just to switch off some lights and make your room a bit darker, think about how much light you're using, or when your last cup of coffee is, when maybe you're having some chocolate or some Coke, wherever that might be, when you're thinking about, say, Coca-Cola, obviously. Just making those little changes can really improve the quality of your sleep.
Absolutely. And, I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that your nervous system, so your body and your daily routines, they work on a push and a pull system. So, throughout the daytime, your natural environment, lots of movement, lots of light exposure, things like that wake your system up and they energize it and they stimulate it, because daytime is, when human beings are supposed to be out hunting and fishing and gathering and, existing and living on Earth. And then in the evening, our natural environment, cooling of the air temperature, darkness, quietness, all of these sorts of things really wind our body down and they pull it into this state of rest. But we as human beings tend to fight against this kind of natural 24-hour urge to wake up and then to wind down by things like stimulation from technology, light exposure, or things like caffeine. Again, one of the rules that I implemented many years ago was not consuming any caffeine after 12 o'clock midday. And I feel like it's made it an enormous change to my sleep. Because I used to be the sort of person who would, work into the afternoon, have a cup of coffee in the morning, one after lunch, one in the afternoon, and I'd be getting home from work, feeling really jarred and really frazzled. And the same can be true if we're staying up, staring at artificial light and such like that in the evenings, or watching television too late without adequate protection. If you are going to watch television, of like the blue light blocking glasses and things like that, you can really feel tired but wired, I think is the malaise of the modern human.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember listening to your very first workshop you did, and I made a few changes. And obviously, being in this area anyway, you understand the things you can do. But just a couple of simple changes from that. Like I pushed my caffeine restriction back. I don't have coffee now after, you do that after a nice meal, all that kind of stuff. I just don't do anymore. And I'm not as strict as you at 12 o'clock, but I get to about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and that's my last cup, knowing that that's 6-7 hours before I'm going to bed. And I won't have anything which is full of caffeine later than that, unless I need to, and unless I know I've got hours before I go to bed for it to kind of get out of my system.
Yeah.
So that's kind of blue lights. That's a little bit kind of about melatonin and kind of a bit of a routine around habits and our, as I said, routine. One thing I think I talk about this a little bit, but naps. What are your view on naps? I'm a big fan, especially mid-afternoon. I hit about 3 o'clock. I'm like, oh, why am I still looking at the screen? The best thing for me is to have half an hour nap. But I know you'll have your own view on this. So give me your view.
Again, my views are always looking and considering evolutionarily, what did we do? How did we behave? And the fact is that, human beings do have this ability to nap, or to actually, the way I prefer to talk about it is in terms of find a daytime recovery period. Because for a lot of people, they might not necessarily fall asleep, but they can find a quiet place for, almost meditation, or just to relax with their eyes closed. They might not fall asleep, but their body really switches off to a degree, and their brain, there's a lot of research showing that naps and meditation and all these sorts of things done during the daytime can really help you to recharge your brain chemicals basically, and to go about the rest of your day with more alertness and more energy and things like that. I think naps can be phenomenal, and I've used them in the past, in the early part of the afternoon and stuff like that, especially if I've got a big day of work on. I know that I can get a little bit of recovery in at lunchtime, and my brain will be more sharp and focused throughout the day. But then again, you have to ask yourself, a lot of people, I think, prop up poor sleep habits with napping and such like that. So it's about, do I need this nap, or can I use this as a tool to help me to perform better? Either way, naps are very appropriate for some people. For some people, they're not appropriate at all. And what I like to try and explain is that, you don't necessarily have to fall asleep in order to, help recover or restore or wind down your brain during the daytime. So there are tons of different applications and, guided sessions out there all over the internet, YouTube and stuff like that, showing people how they can do a little bit of, meditation or easy breath work or some kind of relaxation practice that can almost have, equivalent benefits to napping.
Yeah. And it could even be the opposite to that as well, right? It could be actually what you need. You've been stuck indoors in a stuffy house by yourself all day. The best thing you might need to do is go for a walk. And so there's the other element, the other side of that coin as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I think it's interesting to hear it from your angle, and I think we've chatted about that before. So it's quite nice to get a different angle on it. One of the things I think about napping is some people do it quite well and some people don't. Some people will nap and then 3 hours later on they're woken up more tired than they went to sleep. And I think it's understanding what a nap is used for. And I know there's different bits of research. And I remember one of my friends played for the England hockey team, junior team, and he was allowed to nap during the day, but they were set times on how long. And I think it was using this because of the cycle. So you had like a half an hour or 90 minutes for that nap. It was like you're sleeping or you're awake. You're not doing a long nap or you're not doing a weird cycled nap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. They've shown in some research, that it seems like the optimum time to nap is somewhere between either 10 and 30 minutes, or if you're going to push past 30 minutes, all the way up to the equivalent of one sleep cycle, which is about an hour and a half. So they found that actually, if you nap for more than 30 minutes, your brain can go into quite a deep state of rest that can be difficult to wake yourself from. And so, like either a shorter nap of under 30 minutes or one that constitutes an entire cycle where you move through all of the phases of sleep and then come back out in light sleep after about 90 minutes is actually better. For many people, though, 90 minutes is not going to be quite realistic. So somewhere between the 10 and 30 minute mark usually works quite well.
And I would put an alarm on and have a glass of water ready. Normally, getting up after a nap, the first thing you need is a glass of water, and that normally hydrates you and gets you a bit more ready and prepped. That's just advice from me. That's the kind of thing I do anyway. Lived experience, I call that. So they were kind of like the topics on sleep. I know, obviously, with your nutritional background, let's look at what nutrition had, the effect on nutrition, and let's look, because it's Nutrition Week next week as well. What question? How to ask this question? Our food intake affects our sleep, and it also affects our energy, and it affects our focus. What's your advice in regards to our nutrition throughout the day, but then also looking at how that affects our sleep?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few different elements you can break this conversation up to cover. So what you talk about is like food intake. So what are you eating? You can talk about like food timing. So like when are you eating? And you can also, and I suppose it feeds into the first section a little bit, talk about like supplements and, various different foods, specific foods that might help you to sleep better or worse. The first thing that I always try and talk to people about is food timing. It comes down, it's very closely related to things like timing of light exposure, timing of exercise, timing of caffeine. A lot of the time when it comes to your circadian health or your 24-hour body clock, it really is just about getting the timing of things correct. Throughout millions of years, as hunter-gatherers, we had very brief windows of time in which to carry out tasks such as sleeping, eating, hunting, fishing, gathering, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And we weren't able to, as easily just dedicate longer stretches of the day or specific times to these things. When it comes to sleep, what we know is that actually like our metabolism, the way in which we break down, store and use the energy from foods and the nutrition from foods can be largely impacted by our 24-hour rhythms as well. So actually human beings for much of our evolution were pretty much always consuming food during the daylight hours, and they weren't eating when it was dark. And what we know is that most hunter-gatherer tribes are consuming their last meal at least a couple of hours before bed. So I'm talking like 3, maybe even 4 hours before they go to sleep. And this is one of the principles that I picked up a few years ago, and that's had a phenomenal impact on my health, because just being able to ensure that your body is fully done with digesting before you fall asleep means that it has so much more energy to to direct, I should say, to like the processes of sleep and recovery. So that's like really one important thing. There's also a lot of research now looking at, what they would have called for a long time, and they still do in some circles, this concept of intermittent fasting. And the idea that, actually we don't need to be eating around the clock all day, every day. And instead we could eat between, for example, like 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. And that could be what we call like a 10-hour, eating window, and then you'd have the other 14 hours from your dinner at 6 p.m. until the next morning 8 a.m. to fast. There are a variety of different intermittent fasting approaches and timescales and stuff like that, but they all kind of are driven by this central premise that human beings didn't eat 24 hours of the day. They didn't even eat 12 hours of the day necessarily, and
sometimes so just one meal a day.
Exactly, and our biology can benefit a lot from reducing the frequency of time, or the expansive window that we tend to shovel food in our mouths for on a day-to-day basis. But with the particular reference to getting that last meal in a few hours before you sleep, and some of the awesome benefits there. Then in terms of like what you put in your mouth, a lot of the ways that food can immediately impact your sleep and your energy and your mood and things like that come down to the impact that those foods have on your blood sugar levels. Because if you have blood sugar levels that are wildly fluctuating because of the consumption of a lot of refined and processed and very high sugar foods, then your body is in a state of stress essentially. And if you go to bed, with high blood sugar levels and they dip during the middle of the night, for example, because you've had a big bowl of ice cream before bed, you may be awoken, your body may wake you up due to a release of like cortisol and adrenaline from the stress response, which occurs when your body's blood sugar levels really, really dip down, below kind of baseline, that kind of idea. So there is, there's that factor to consider, am I eating a lot of refined and processed foods before bedtime in particular? Because that can have a huge impact on your sleep. And then, you can talk more broadly about a few nutrients. Again, this is just really just a quick step 1, 2, 3 cover of, nutrition and sleep. But for example, the mineral magnesium, we know that there's research and evidence out there to show that in individuals who are deficient in this nutrient, that, supplementing with it can have a huge impact on improving quality of sleep and such like that. And what we know from other kind of observational research is that there's a lot of people, in the modern world who are deficient in magnesium. So many of us would benefit from taking, a magnesium supplement, for example, in the evening. There are tons and tons of, other herbs and things like that are touted to improve sleep. Chamomile, lavender. There are other, more exotic herbs and foods and stuff like that. And I'm not saying for any reason that any of these things can't help to improve our sleep. But primarily when it comes to our food intake, the timing and the ability for our diet to stabilize our blood sugar levels are two of the biggest factors in terms of not only just our sleep but our overall health and metabolism and digestion of our food.
Yeah, fantastic advice. The intermittent fasting things like I've done for the last 3 years. But my timings are a bit off, especially during the hockey season. And I remember you saying in previous workshop that some people play sport until late in the evenings or have hobbies on, which means they eat later. And that it's the same as socializing with your sleep patterns. Like sometimes that's okay. It's looking at the habits around that. But that advice is fantastic. So let's look at this at the workplace. Let's look at this at what CEOs and business owners can do to support their employees. What's the first suggestion you can give a CEO, business owner, or HR director about implementing or helping their employees get better sleep habits or getting better nutritional support? Apart from obviously employing employees' health and getting the workshops in late.
Yeah, so I mean, the sleep. So just to focus on one thing, it's part and parcel. Some of it is education. That's where professionals such as myself and many others in the industry can provide information to employees. It can help them change behaviors at home or within their own lifestyle, which is within their autonomy and their control, to make improvements to their sleep and their well-being. The ability to provide education is like providing empowerment, right? Without the education, sometimes the change can't happen. However, even with some education in some cultures and environments in the workplace, it can be difficult for employees to act upon the advice or the information that they've read. So, when we have, for example, deadlines that must be met, or organizations with employees that are, working outside of a 9 to 5 kind of environment, maybe you're working with different groups across the globe, maybe time zones are fluctuating, stuff like that. It's really important to be able to give like clear, guidelines and boundaries to what's expected of an individual, so that they either can or cannot create a better relationship with their work and their work-life balance, especially if working from home and, having technology connected on mobile phones and laptops and being accessible 24/7. And also maybe even looking into, types of technology that can help to protect their staff members if they are having to work, late hours, being on computer screens late into the evening. There are a variety of different, technology programs out there that can assist with like the filtering of light on your devices. Things like blue light blocking glasses we've seen are very popular and very effective across the workforce. We've done a few, research studies now, and we're also looking at within schools and stuff like that. So I believe there's like kind of a 2 or 3 pronged approach in the sense that employees need education that can empower them, but they also need the blessing of an organization to put that information into practice. And as well as, or when it's not always possible, they need protection from some of the harmful impacts of, for example, the world of technology and I suppose fintech in essence.
Yeah, and I think when I always talk about this, and from what our company can do, it's about giving the support, giving the education, and allowing them to do that. But as you said, a company's culture, whether that's an always-on culture where that balance isn't allowed and they feel like they have to be on response to everything, isn't going to help a company or an individual thrive. So that's an internal look, and it's something that the companies have to change. But in regards to what they can do, it's about, as you said, education, empowerment, then being able to support them through that. Don't just educate somebody and then don't let them do that, and don't let them have the opportunity to improve their lifestyles and improve their quality of life. Whether that's work-life balance, health, nutrition, whatever it is. The kind of things I always talk to people about.
Mm-hmm. It's about, a lot of it is about culture of an organization, and really, if you are senior level management, listening to this, I'd hope it's within your interest to improve your health and well-being, and to be able to, be a good example to staff members. And what we often find is that, in organizations where there is an active interest at the top for pursuing these sorts of behaviors, there tends to be more of a focus or encouragement in the workplace of sharing that education and that empowerment with staff. So it's about, a lot of the time immersing yourself in, the opportunity that stands ahead of you to be able to kind of up level yourself as well as, your employees, your staff, your teams.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to take one step back quickly, just because it's a topic which people have asked me about before. And as somebody which obviously isn't a specialist within sleep, but understands sleep and the way it works, I find it a challenge to give advice about. And I know you'll have better advice than I do. Shift work.
Shift work. Wow.
How'd you hit that challenge on the head?
You just opened a can of worms there, Rich.
I know. We've got what, 5 minutes left to talk about this. Go.
Work is extremely complex topic of conversation. There's lots of different factors. Does somebody work all night, all day, and is that their lives, or do they have rotating shifts? Maybe they just work mornings and evenings. Maybe they work days and nights. Maybe that fluctuates on a consistent basis. What we know is that there is a lot of increase in negative health outcomes that are associated with shift work, especially in places like the forces, whether that's the police or nurses, ambulances, hospitals, care units, all these sorts of things. Are essential workers essentially some of the people that are put under some of the most stress when it comes to shift work. Now, there is no way to have a perfect relationship with sleep and to be conducting shift work. You can do the best that you can with the tools that you're given. And, a lot of education when it comes to, light and nutrition, movement is even more important in individuals whose sleeping patterns are regularly disrupted because of the needs and the requirements of their jobs or their passions. I've done a lot of work with organizations, stock traders, some of them, health and wellbeing services, like I said, essential workers and such like that, and supported them with sleep around these issues. A lot of it again comes down to the same kind of age-old advice of looking at their light exposure, looking at their food intake, looking at their relaxation, their caffeine practices, and how can they as quickly as possible establish healthy routines, whether they're working days or nights. Obviously there is a large factor or force you're fighting against, which is the natural strive to be awake in the daytime and to be asleep at night. But applying the same sorts of day and nighttime routines, maybe on a slightly different day and night and day schedule, can still massively help people in these situations. Many people, though, will only perform shift work for certain periods of their lives. And it's something that I think you really have to ask yourself, if your health is majorly being disrupted by shift work, are there changes that can be made to the way that you work in order to protect and sustain your health. But it's a very important topic of conversation, especially the work that we can do to support people who are doing shift work, because as I've said, so many of those people are providing essential services that help our society and that help us as individuals.
It is one of those ones, isn't it? And you look at it as how can we give the best information, because we know how much it can be affected. When you do the research behind sleep, you know how much these people can be affected by that shift in routine. So yeah, it's good advice, great advice, and that's going to be more of an individual piece of advice. So if you do want to find out more, another plug here, give us a shout. And going on to plugs, the Sleep Week starting Monday. Dan White, what are you doing?
What am I doing? I'm speaking to a lot of people next week. I'm in various organizations locally in Guernsey. I'm in some schools over here, shedding some education. I'm going to be releasing some amazing results that we've been getting from some research we've been doing in schools recently around the use of our blue light blocking glasses. I have webinars galore, 2 or 3 every single day. I'm going to be fully immersed in sleep chat and discussion next week. It's going to be good. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, you're going to need some good sleep on the weekend, man.
Some good sleep between now and then, my brother.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that. What we'll do, Dan, and make sure you put like your sleep well, live better. Any of kind of resources you're going to be doing on this on the comments in the chat, just so people can go and follow you. And if you aren't following Dan, you need to follow Dan. But if you want to have a chat about how we can get Dan into your organization, give us a shout. Other than that, Dan, we are 41 minutes, 42 minutes. Is there anything you want to finish on?
No, I would just say, if anybody's interest is piqued by the topic of sleep, don't let that, don't put that to bed too early. Pick that up, explore it a little bit, because there are so many gains to be made for everybody on our earth from better quality sleep, and many of the changes that you may make to achieve that are simple. So explore that area, see what can change for you, and really embrace change, I guess, in that essence.
Yeah, for sure.
And possibility.
Dan, thanks for joining me. The next Wellbeing chat is going to be in 2 weeks' time with Lee, as we come to the anniversary of 2 years of COVID. We're going to look at the effects of what COVID's brought and how that's affected the workplace, how that's affected our environmental well-being, and some of the other challenges we've been looking at over the last 2 years. And kind of obviously we'll look at the future and what we can do to keep everybody thriving. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously I'll share it. We'll get Lee to share it. But have a great Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of the week. Get on. Make sure you follow Dan and follow me on the Sleep Week. We're going to give off obviously lots of information about little habits, little things, little tips you can do. If Dan has any rest within his week to upload all that kind of stuff. So guys, take care. Thank you for joining us, and we will speak to you all soon.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Let's end this broadcast.